You're listening to Consolidate That. Ukraine is my motherland. It is now under a savage attack by Russia. Ukraine is shielding Europe and the rest of the civilized world from Putin's barbaric aggression. Ukrainians are brave and effectively fighting back. Let's help. Make a donation to Armed Forces of Ukraine. Link is in the show notes. Hashtag Stand with Ukraine.
Welcome back to Consolidate That. We are diving deep into season 3. We had a fantastic episode last week. If you didn't get a chance to listen to Fritz Berger, give us a bit of a recap of what 2022 had and what we see coming in 2023. But I think this next direction we're going in for this season is going to be fantastic. We've got a return guest who I think brings some of the deepest knowledge that we have on our team to the veterinary space, and really excited to listen to what Steve has to say. Ivan, I'll hand it to you to introduce Steve again and go from there.
All right. Well, exciting episode. So, reintroducing Steve. Steve is our vice president of field operations. He's in charge of everything that's going on in the hospitals. And he served as director of operations and vice president of operations at Pet Vet Care Centers from 2016 to 2021. Previously, Steve held position of field director, Arizona West, while working at Benfield Pet Hospitals. He completed his Lean Sigma Green Belt and Master in Organizational Management from University of Phoenix. Additionally, Steve received a Bachelor of Science in Political Science from Kansas State University. Steve, welcome back. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here again. Had a lot of fun last time. I'm looking forward to our chat.
So we wanted to talk about something that we are working on right now. So one thing, in Galaxy, one thing is to talk about employee ownership and say, hey, you have shares in the company, now you are the owner. And as it turns out, the question is, what's next? That doesn't magically convert people into acting like the founder of the business or the owner of the business. And this is the predicament that then we discovered through, at least we have a lot of help from the National Center of Employee Ownership. So there are components to it other than just saying, hey, you're the owner now, because that seemed not to change anything. So what are the components? What do you need to do to actually drive the culture of employee ownership rather than just say that you have it?
Sure. I think that's a fantastic lead in. I think from my seat, I think there are three main points. I think we're doing a good job tying it into what we call our cultural integration package. One of them, business acumen. It starts with that. How do you tick and tie employee ownership to results, things that you can measure? We've seen in a lot of the veterinary hospitals that there is a bit of a disconnect between the metrics or the numbers to what we do every day in a hospital. And business acumen helps to connect that piece up to where we can see, taking away words of performance, but it's the result of an action is what we're looking for, and to try to really get our employees again to understand that relationship. And on the next level, once they understand how the base levers interact with each other, is how does that tie to a stock price, as an example, to where there be an immediate effect, kind of a cause and effect relationship. If I do this, I can see the result should be this. So we have that package put together. Looking forward to rolling that out in our hospitals. I think the second one, and probably just as important, if not more important, it's the classic "what we do matters," right? And that's that. After they understand from a measurement perspective, how do they understand it intrinsically? How can I do something, and when I do something, this is the effect that it has. When they can tie that intrinsic piece, to me, when I look at it, to the measurement piece, then it comes into the third piece. Now, how do I enact that? And how I enact things that matter, that drives results, is through idea generation.
That's fantastic.
And there's a fascinating.
No, that's awesome. So three components, and I want to dive into each one of them. So number one, giving them the basic education on the business. Number two is letting them implement things that will have an effect on those numbers. And then three, the mechanism of how do you actually do that? So bringing it all together through idea generation and the mechanism of what we call idea portal. So let's dive into one at a time. So I don't think that it's a secret to anybody that not just veterinarians, but CSRs, technicians, anybody who's working on the floor hate business. They just hate hearing the numbers, EBITDA, revenue. I'm here to treat pets. I don't care about your numbers here. So, what is that? Just this sort of basic information that we need to provide to these people, that they understand at least enough to then when they hear or when they aim some changes that they can do at the place where they work, that they will stick with them. What do we choose to explain to them, like one or two things that are coming from the business side of things?
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces is to educate all of our employees that there is a direct link between financial health and, as an example, pet health, or the quality of medicine that we practice in a hospital, and to understand that relationship. It's to We use the phrase gold standard care. It's a very common phrase in our industry. To be able to provide gold standard care in a hospital, we need to be have a gold standard financial health. They go hand in hand. I could give a lot of actual physical examples. We know that the capital it takes to outfit a hospital is very high. To be able to afford an ultrasound or the digital X-ray, et cetera, it takes a significant investment. So how do we educate our employees? How do we fund gold standard care? So that's one way I found that was really effective, is basically, again, tying it together that financial health equals gold standard care, and gold standard care needs financial health. Business acumen can help as we educate our employees of that relationship. Business acumen can help with that very simple equation.
When you're talking about the capital needs and the price point, the cost of things within the clinic, do you think it's important to be transparent or talk about those sort of things when people discuss, oh man, I wish we had a new this or a new x-ray machine, or oh, why don't we get an upgraded table that I saw at VMX or WVC last week, or anything like that? Is it something that, hey, this is what we need the ROI to be? How do you think that that can be communicated in a way that's
Sure.
tangible and accessible?
Mhm. I think I can give a real life example on that one that's going on in one of our hospitals. We have one of our doctors who really wanted to become more proficient in ultrasound. So, fantastic idea. It serves many purposes, not only intrinsic development for the doctor, but also it opens up new services that we can provide to clients and their pets, right? So, the ROI behind that would be that how can we put together a package or a suite of services that we can offer, set the price points for it. So that's an example of a real life ROI for me, that you're increasing the quality of care we're providing to our pets, and which drives client experience, but we're also increasing the intrinsic benefit to one of our doctors by helping them get some training that they were wanting. So to me, that's how you do it. Is You don't just come out and say, hey, the unit costs X amount of dollars and we need to generate X to do it. You put it in, come down to a more base level. And you kind of using, again, tying the three pieces together, acumen, what matters, and idea generation, to come back and say, what do you suggest? Let's come up with a suite of services. You tell me what you're comfortable doing, how we can outline it, how you present them in the rooms, how we price it. So to me, that's a classic real world example
That's
of how
awesome.
we would.
So what we bring to the clinics is a very basic education, because you can't go into cogs, EBITDA, and but I think that it's simple enough to explain, and that's how we explain it to our folks, is that there is money that's coming in, and usually that's what everybody sees. So when you're on the floor and the technician, you're like, oh, that surgery was $4,500. That's what doctors put in their pockets, which is not necessarily true, but that's what it looks like on the surface, because it's hard to understand that there's also expenses. So there's two things: there's money coming in the bank, and then there's money coming out of the bank to facilitate all of this surgery, let's say, that we're calling $4,500. But the cool thing at Galaxy is that then what's the difference between the revenue and the expenses is really the margin that forms that share value. And I think that this is where we're forming that connection for everybody in the company, because everybody is a shareholder through our ESOP. Then that means that whatever we generate in between, then that what becomes that wealth that we generate over the years of working in Galaxy and improving Galaxy share price. And I think that that's where the magic comes
Right.
in. Then you can start thinking, okay, what do we do to increase revenue? What do we do to decrease expenses? And then how our share price becomes more valuable. So from that, let's transition then to the feeling of what I can do in my workplace matters. So I know that. So my favorite example was, and we're bringing this sort of from my learnings in Lean and in the hospital. So it's not all about the money. It's not all about the efficiency, but you need to give direction to people, which does come from that financial acumen. But you want to see that also that the organization caring not only about those two things, but also about customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction. So you can give direction to people to look for the opportunities in their workplace for all of those sections of what we care about. And if you're an organization that cares not only about money, then there's a bigger spectrum. So my favorite example was at Boston General Hospital, where there was the nurse that came up with this idea. The emergency department. I think I told this story many times, but in emergency department there was a sign that said "Don't void before seeing a doctor." And then everybody would go to the bathroom, pee, and then they don't have a urine sample. So there was a non-English speaking nurse that came, an immigrant, and then she said, maybe people like myself don't know what void means. She said, what if we replace it and say, don't pee before you see a doctor? And then they changed the sign, and everybody understood that, and basically they were collecting the urine sample for the initial diagnostics. But she was excited that she made a change, suggested the change. It was taken seriously by management, and then it radically changed the outcome. So that was a great example to me that what you change in your place of work, you're the only one who knows exactly what's going on there. It's not the management somewhere in the headquarters. It's not the manager of the hospital, even, because they don't spend every day and time doing the surgery, cleaning teeth, or folding the surgical packs. Where are those areas of opportunity? It's really the frontline people that are doing the work that have those ideas. So, Steve, what are those things that, for example, let's say technicians or CSRs or doctors that can bring in the ideas that not necessarily address the financial picture, but what have you seen as ideas, or what do you think could be the ideas that people can it just can get the sort of the brain going and thinking in the places where they work?
Sure, yeah, that's a great one. I think I'll tie it back to the book Ideas Are Free, and something one of the things that was in the book, one of the paradigms was out of one idea, many ideas can come out of it, right? And so the key for a leader is you can't stifle the thought of idea generation. In one of our hospitals, we rolled out a major initiative around workflow optimization, and one of the observations that was made from within that team was how the tech assistants were being used versus the licensed technicians. And they're the ones that came up with the idea that there was some alternative training that we could be doing with the tech, the veterinary assistants to elevate their skills so they could cross function and come over and help in other areas. This wasn't something that us as leaders came up with. And it really doesn't necessarily drive straight to a financial gain. But what it did is this secondary idea to a larger idea that came from them improves the efficiency in the hospital. And again, that intrinsic desire of all of us where we want to learn and grow. So I think that's an example to where what I do matters. And when out of a bigger idea, other ideas come, and us as leaders is to help facilitate that and give them the tools to execute on it.
So you mentioned ideas are free, and I don't think that we introduced what that is. Can you talk a little bit about what is that book, and what are we trying to implement that comes out of it?
Sure. Great book is written by Alan Robinson and Dean Schrader. I think the premise is that we all know that ideas are out there. They're every day. They sit within employees. The key is how do we create an environment that's a safe place for employees to bubble up their ideas. And I think from a cultural perspective and leadership perspective, we all get caught in the trap as leaders of pushing our ideas down or creating a push system to where there could be resistance or where employees look at it and say, well, I have a better way or a different way. So by giving that safe environment to employees to give us ideas, it creates more of a pull system. And as we use employees' ideas and we recognize the employees, it can create an intrinsic award system versus a material award system, and it creates a repetitive loop. I like to use that phrase where it's kind of like a savings account. Once you start saving, you want to save more. Once ideas start coming up from employees and are utilized, it creates that intrinsic desire to want to do more. So it creates three things. You want to create that environment, and that's what the book really espouses: how to create a scalable environment where we ask for and act on ideas. When you have these ideas, then the second, how do you use them or develop your people through them? And then the third is as leaders, our job is to champion those ideas. I think those are some of the big takeaways that I took out of the book.
Well,
I think they're
and
just
and we, we had an idea portal before, and I'm happy to admit that we took it from a little bit different environment. When we were in SmartFlow, we wanted to be certain about the features that we implement, that they're highly demanded by the customers. And then also what we've done, we also wanted to slow down the customers that have gazillion of ideas and make sure that their ideas are important to others. So that's why we adopted the system from software development on sort of how to take ideas from the customers and then make features out of them. But the mistake that we made is that really creates a lot of bureaucracy around the process. And we had this voting system, and then there's a committee, and then that committee decides who implements it, which is basically a direct path to not doing it ever. So I'm glad that we pivoted from that, because the magic that, as I understand it, in the idea implementation to drive employee ownership culture is really rapid implementation. And you have an idea, implement it. The only thing that we want as an organization to have is the recording of how many ideas and how fast they were implemented. And the more, the better. And the which department, hospital, or team is implementing ideas the better, then congratulate them and celebrate it. So that's, I think, there was a great pivot, and we're still catching up on how to do it mechanically, how to do it at scale across the organization. But I really like the concept of this rapid idea implementation, and it seems like that is probably a way to change management, because what we see a lot in the consolidators, they will come in and say, here's our 100-day plan, and in that 100-day plan, they're trying to shove down the clinic's throat everything that they came up with, and not necessarily something that the clinic came up with or want to do. So that, I think, is, even though we were, very practical about it and try to implement change management, even what I see is that at best what we're trying to do, it still needs more selling. It needs more buy-in from the clinic staff, and I think that's where we need to get better at, and I hope that the idea portal and the idea system will help us with that.
Well,
um,
something just to add on there, I think it's kind of interesting. We're talking a lot about instilling culture, and I think a lot of groups and people would think that you parse culture out to your people and culture team, right? And I think it's kind of neat that we're looking at operations and Steve running our operations within the clinics as a major portion of driving the change in that culture. And I think that kind of aligns with, we are, every person on here is an employee. We are, just because we're not the employee in the clinic, every person's an employee, and we have that same employee owned culture, that centric culture that we're bringing to the clinic. We would hope that we would be able to instill that as well, without just saying, okay, culture falls on the people with HRIS and all those sort of letters behind their name. So really cool to see that you're doing that, Steve. And I know it's something that is a big lift, but it's definitely felt and appreciated when people join on and get on board with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things I try to do, and I think we can probably all do a better job of it. There was, to me, in the book, a very powerful portal or way to get this done, and it was two words. It was just simply ask. Have to remind myself to, if there's a problem or if there's an issue or a direction we want to go, as opposed to, as Ivan stated earlier, a typical consolidator or a reflex to push down. Hey, this is what we want to get done, and this is what you're going to do. Is to stop and then simply ask the people in the hospital, hey, this is what we want to do. What do you think? So, and get there, and that immediately opens the door to get their buy-in. So it was 2 words I thought were very powerful. If you want to get something done, simply ask. If you have a great idea, simply ask somebody what they think of it. So that was something I wrote down. Try to keep it as a post-it on the side of my monitor when I'm talking to people. Steve, simply ask. So,
So I want to maybe conclude, because we're almost up in time, with sort of another definition of these ideas and how do we perceive them now, instead of like, what is the big idea, how to drive my 20% of the business. Those are all cool things. Those are all your value creation plan items and your growth levers, and that's something that that you need to have as a part of the strategy. But the secret in the productivity of any company, and what I liked actually in that book as well, what they were talking about, we came out with, let's do telemedicine. Well, there's many companies that can hear that and be like, we also will do telemedicine. But what is not possible to replicate by the competition is million of small ideas improvements every day. Nobody can copy that. So that is a true way of competitive advantage. And what I really like about the different definition of it. So a colleague of mine, Beth Davidow, she was a leader in one of the hospitals in Seattle. I'm constantly stealing her definition of this. She calls it pebbles in your shoes. So basically, what are those day-to-day annoying things like pebbles in your shoes that you just want to take out so you can walk comfortably? And that comparison really stuck in my head, because it's not the big aha moment. It's, I hate this. This is annoying. This is what I want to change, and go ahead and do it. So that's how I'm hoping that the teams are going to be focusing on generating ideas. Hopefully, we can catch at least and monitor how productive they are. And in fact, it's one of the 4 quadrants of our soon coming balanced scorecard, is how many ideas were submitted and how many ideas were implemented across the organization. We ran up on time. Steve, thank you so much for joining us again. We're hoping to see you here again. There's lots of things coming up in 2023. They're all exciting, and we really appreciate your time.
Right. Thank you. Had a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to Consolidate That. If you want to hear our new episodes, please find us on any podcast platform. Also, you can learn more about us on our website at galaxyvets.com.